David Lee Roth was one of the most recognizable faces in rock and roll from the late 1970s through the 90s. He's most famous as the lead singer for Van Halen, but after they disbanded in 1984, he continued on with a very successful solo career. While fans loved a lot of his solo music, they always not so secretly hoped for a Van Halen reunion. That happened in 2007, spawning their most successful tour ever. In this video, we're going to take a look at David Lee Roth's career, both in and out of Van Halen, and what led to his recent retirement announcement. To the shock of many longtime fans, David Lee Roth recently announced he'll be retiring from the music business. The former Van Halen frontman dropped the news in a recent interview with the Las Vegas Review-Journal, saying he's throwing in the shoes after his upcoming Vegas concerts. In the interview, Roth says it was the first and only official word on his retirement. He added he wouldn't provide any further explanation and that the 5 shows he has scheduled at the House of Blues in December and January would be his last. He didn't provide a reason, but his announcement came almost exactly a year after his former bandmate Eddie Van Halen died from cancer. In an interview, Roth stated he'd been contemplating Eddie's death recently and was feeling compelled to come to grips with how little time he has left himself. He went on to say he thought he might have been the first of the original Van Halen lineup to go. His doctors have been telling him to consider the effects his stage appearances have on his future for some time. In spite of the pending retirement, David Lee Roth isn't one to let his fans down and plans to bring his A-game to the final shows. He said that when he's in the audience for a show, all he asks is that a performer give it everything. That's what he's tried to do for the last 50 years. Strangely, Roth seems to have predicted his own retirement 30 years earlier, almost to the day. In the video for his 1991 solo hit, A Little Ain't Enough, he looks into a crystal ball to see his own future. He sees a billboard that says Diamond Dave and the Absolute Final Tour. A DeLorean-type vehicle pulls up and an overweight aged Roth steps out. The date, October 10th, 2021, flashes across the screen, while paparazzi decked out in spacesuits swarm the singer. If Roth had waited a few more days, it would have landed on the date in that video. It makes you wonder why he didn't do exactly that. He's still in great shape, not the aged, overweight version of himself in the video, so maybe he figured he was different enough. David Lee Roth's career arc. David Lee Roth was singing solo and with an R&B group called the Red Ball Jets by the time he was in his late teens. Another LA-based group called Mammoth rented the Red Ball Jets' PA system for their shows occasionally. You'll no doubt recognize the names of 2 members of Mammoth, Eddie and Alex Van Halen. At the time, Eddie was singing as well as playing lead guitar, but after a couple failed auditions, David Lee Roth joined the band as the lead singer. It was Roth that suggested the band change its name to Van Halen, and the rest is history. The band became a regular highlight on the Sunset Strip, at clubs like Whiskey A Go-Go and Gazzarri's. In 1976, Gene Simmons noticed the band, thinking he might recruit Eddie Van Halen for his own band, Kiss. He helped Van Halen produce a demo tape, which featured many of the songs that ended up on their first album. Van Halen released its debut album in 1978, and they immediately started getting some major attention. They toured with Journey and Montrose for the first few months, followed by several months opening for Black Sabbath. Needless to say, Van Halen stole the show every night. That first album reached number 19 on the Billboard 200 and eventually was certified diamond by the RIAA after selling more than 12 million copies. Over the next 5 years, Van Halen recorded 5 more albums, culminating with the album 1984. This album produced some of their most famous hits, including Jump and Panama. But by this time, there was a lot of conflict between David Lee Roth and Eddie Van Halen. Roth has always been a flamboyant frontman who did everything he could to sell the band. He wanted to boost their popularity by playing original or even cover songs about partying, dancing, and women, while Eddie was more interested in deeper, darker tunes. This conflict is most apparent in the difference between 2 of the classic Van Halen albums of that era. Fair Warning was Eddie's album, with darker, heavier songs, while Diver Down was Dave's album, which featured lighter songs and even a cover of Dancing in the Street. Even though the conflict led to Roth parting ways with Van Halen in 1984, Alex Van Halen always credited that conflict for the band's success. According to Alex, Dave was a performer, more vaudeville than musician. He was into disco and dance music, while the rest of the band was into Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, and other rock acts. The combination ultimately ended the band's first run with Roth, but it also added the pop vibe that made so many of their songs the huge hits they were. After parting ways with Van Halen in 1984, David Lee Roth wanted to get a solo recording out as quickly as possible. In early 1985, Roth released Crazy from the Heart. The EP featured 4 cover songs that had a distinctly different vibe from the work he'd done with Van Halen. His cover of the Beach Boys' California Girls reached number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100, matching the original version from 20 years earlier. Following the EP's release, Roth put together a new band, featuring Steve Vai on guitar, Billy Sheehan on bass, and Greg Bissonette on drums. This supergroup worked with Van Halen's original producer, Ted Templeman, to release Roth's debut solo album, Eat 'Em and Smile. While most of the album was a return to Roth's hard rock roots with Van Halen, it also included some of his more eclectic tastes, with a jazz cover of Frank Sinatra's That's Life and the bluesier 1960s hit Tobacco Road. Over the next several years, Roth released 3 more solo albums, but by 1994, grunge had taken a hold of the music industry, and his 1994 release, Your Filthy Little Mouth, failed to achieve even gold status. The following year, Roth returned with a lounge act that mostly played in Las Vegas casinos. The act included a brass band and several exotic dancers. He released another solo album, DLR Band, in 1998, another hard-rocking album full of new material. But once again, it failed to match the success of his earlier work. Roth had a short-lived reunion with Van Halen in 1996 when he recorded 2 new songs with them for their first Greatest Hits album. He even appeared alongside the rest of the band at the 1996 MTV Music Video Awards, but he and Eddie reportedly couldn't get along well enough to make the reunion stick, at least not for another decade or so. In January of 2007, it was announced David Lee Roth was rejoining Van Halen for a major tour. The tour launched in September of that year, and at the press conference held to announce the tour, Eddie Van Halen said that he and Roth were like brothers now. The promise of a new album came true in 2012 with the release of A Different Kind of Truth. The album featured several songs that had been reworked from songs the band had originally demoed in the late 70s and early 80s. It was heralded as a return to form for Van Halen and spawned a worldwide tour, the 8th most lucrative concert tour of the year. In spite of having said they were like brothers, Eddie later revealed he and Roth didn't want to be friends. They had very different outlooks on life, and while they continued to work well together, those differences made it hard to connect. Eddie Van Halen's death in October of 2020 put an end to the hopes of another tour with Van Halen. And now Roth's announcement of his pending retirement means the end of his solo career as well. But fans have something to look forward to in his upcoming shows. While nothing's been announced, there's a good chance Alex Van Halen could join Dave on stage, and maybe even Eddie's son Wolfgang and Van Halen's original bassist Michael Anthony could put an appearance in. Now it's time to hear from you. What's your favorite song featuring David Lee Roth? Let us know in the comments section below. And before you go, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to Facts Verse if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.